Okay, excellent. So I think I've managed to connect to YouTube. So folks, I'm going to do it on YouTube and at least we'll have it here and we're recording. So welcome everyone to CAISO's IDAHOBIT Media Conference. And it's just, we want to welcome everyone. My name is Angelique Nixon. I'm a director of CAISO Sex and Gender Justice. And we are hosting today a media conference for, or in honor of, and in recognition of IDAHOBIT, which is the International Day Against Homophobia, Biphobia, and Transphobia. And this is an international day recognized for quite a number of years. And we're going to share more with you for what we are doing here today. I'm pleased to be joined by a number of colleagues. This is a media conference where we've invited media and stakeholders to join us. And so thank you for being here. Kellogg, my colleague, will also be speaking with me and sharing today, as well as other members of the CAISO team. So if we can share the program, please. So up today, you can see that we have a short program for you. We're going to give an overview of CAISO and Wholeness and Justice, the program. We're going to share with you reports of insights and key findings that will be presented by Kellogg, our research and program associate. We will also have a clinical discussion from our clinical team, Ray and Akila, who will discuss the impact of homophobia, transphobia, and biphobia on LGBTQI plus people and communities. And we'll also offer a snapshot of our services for this year. Our report, as you will see, is for our first full year of services from December 2020 to December 2021, where we have analyzed and pulled out key insights and findings from over a year of offering full services to clients. And so we will move to our intro. Just to let you know who CAISO is, we are a feminist organization that seeks to mobilize a forward-thinking, visionary, and human rights approach to wholeness, justice, and inclusion for Trinidad and Tobago's LGBTQI plus communities through developing analysis, alliances, and advocacy. Our vision is to be a catalyst for political, cultural, and social transformation that secures and affirms LGBTQI rights and freedoms. And so then, of course, in honor of IDAHOBIT, we want to draw attention. CAISO has been operating since and formed in 2009 and rebranded as CAISO Sex and Gender Justice in 2016, as we continued long over a decade's call and organizing work to fight against discrimination and raise awareness, particularly around the issues of human rights obligations. And for this IDAHOBIT, we continue to call upon the government of Trinidad and Tobago to meet its human rights obligation and to be as inclusive as possible and protect all people living in Trinidad and Tobago from harm and discrimination. We raise these issues, especially today, because there continue to be a lack of protections afforded to LGBTQI plus people living in Trinidad and Tobago, and there are few avenues for accessible and meaningful redress. And responding to that, CAISO began a program called Wholeness and Justice in May of 2020. I will share more of that as we move through. And we created this program to respond to violations of various kinds of human rights violations, of access to services, any breach of human rights that are experienced by LGBTQI plus people and communities. And we have been doing that through our Wholeness and Justice program. CAISO operates through this framework of how we respond to discrimination. We do that in multiple ways. We also want to create spaces where people feel safe and whole. And we are doing that in a number of ways, which we'll share throughout. Our focus today, of course, is wholeness and justice, but I must mention that we also have created an LGBTQI workplace policy. We've also continuously called through our alliances and through our work in coalitions, calling for gender affirming and LGBTQI sensitive practices, particularly in social services and healthcare. We've also engaged in training with a number of different LGBTQI organizations and projects around gender and sexuality sensitivity training, for first responders. We've also developed policy actions that are very clear around how we create inclusive and enabling environments and policies and legislation and practices for people who are marginalized, and in particular LGBTQI+ communities. And so just sharing in our work with CAISO, we want to be clear when we talk about LGBTQI+ communities and advocacy that this includes the spectrum of what we describe and generally called sexual and gender minorities, or what we like to affirm as diverse sexualities and genders, that there is a spectrum of sex and gender diversity, even though we might, of course, make up a minority. So when we talk about sexual orientation, sex and gender identity, we want to be clear about what those terms mean. And we also want to affirm that LGBTQI+ people are diverse and are part of many other communities across difference, racial and ethnic backgrounds, socioeconomic status, religion, political affiliations, and so on. And several civil society organizations have worked together over the years under a coalition called the Alliance for Justice and Diversity. We developed shared policy agendas since 2015, most recently in 2020. And the completed Sexual Culture of Justice project, which in many ways, Wholeness and Justice came out of that work of wanting to, one, as we demand for legislative change, and two, as we respond to the needs of communities. And it's important to note that in our work for 10 years, we have been highlighting the ways that the Equal Opportunity Act continuously excludes sexual orientation and does not offer protection on the basis of sexual orientation or gender identity, and that we have supported a call for amendments that the Equal Opportunity Commission also has called for. And so in many ways, the work that we are doing, we are responding to gaps. We are responding to gaps in legislation. We are responding to gaps in practice and in the provision of services at both the government level, the ministries, social services, but also in terms of private sector and access to other kinds of services. Currently, it's important to note that as we share this work with you today, that it is that someone who is queer, lesbian, gay, bisexual, trans, and so on, any member or part of the sexual and gender diversity that we are sharing today, the LGBTQI+ communities, can experience discrimination without being able to seek redress for many reasons, not only stigma and discrimination, but also because there are no legal protections in place on the basis of sexual orientation and gender identity. And while we, of course, decriminalization has happened, but we still need legislative changes to enact protections, particularly in our anti-discrimination legislation. And so that is the context in which we do this work. And you can see here just an example this year alone of some of the work we're doing. We are advancing an LGBTQI workplace policy, a series of workshops and a toolkit. We've also done work with the Ministry of Social Development through our Sign Together signature project that brings together a number of different issues and working towards, one, teaching sign language and also supporting deaf LGBTQI people and raising gender and sexuality sensitivity in a number of different fronts. And just to say a little bit more about Wholeness and Justice before I turn over to Kellogg, who will provide an overview of the report, our goal is to expand access to wholeness, justice, and social services. We respond to violations that are experienced by any LGBTQI+ person who comes to our program. And we are particularly focused on providing services to trans, non-binary, and gender non-conforming, as well as intersex people. We also offer clinically competent, trauma-informed interventions that enable healing and resilience. And you'll hear more about this work and what we've managed to do over a year and a half of doing this work. We offer 3 types of services. Kellogg will explain how you can access services as well, because we want the media to know, and we want the public to know how you can reach our program. We offer legal support. This is really our main area, but we understand anyone who experiences a violation, any act of discrimination or abuse, we do what we can with our available resources. And sometimes we have to also reach out to different referral partners. And we understand that in seeking legal redress, that this can be a painful process, and that we think about the wholeness of of community members, as well as people who've experienced any kind of harm. So we offer clinical psychosocial support because we recognize the ways that trauma and any kind of discriminatory act can affect someone's being. And so we support people through that process. That's the goal of the program. And then we also consider wholeness development through emergency support, which we will share more of. So I just want to share quickly our snapshot of services to give you a sense of how the program began. In 2020, of course, we were in the midst of COVID lockdown. And so we started a smaller scope of the project with Ray, who you'll hear from later, as our COVID case navigation. We focused on supporting people in navigating social services and really the need of food support during a moment when the economic fallout from the pandemic, as well as health challenges, affected so many people in LGBTQI communities, including people, as well as people involved in sex work, who were really excluded. People involved in informal work were excluded from many of the national relief programs. So we did that for the first month of the project, and then we launched full services in December 2020 to December 2021, which offers a year of insights, which we present to you. And of course, the work continues, which we will share more about. Importantly, I want to just give you some numbers. 33 clients enlisted in the program. And additionally, we offered 40 food vouchers in emergency support to members, to different people in the communities who needed support. Out of our clients, 9 received emergency support, including medical, rental, travel, and food support. And we also engaged in not only training our team, but also offering other kinds of capacity building for service providers. And I'm happy to hand over to Kellogg, who will introduce our team with Wholeness and Justice. Please, you can use the chat of share your questions, but we would like to hold to the end. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Angelique. So yeah, I will be talking today about wholeness and justice, how one can access the services, as well as the work that we've done so far. But first, let me introduce you to the team. There is the clinical team, which is made up of our community caseworker, Ray Alabi, who's here with us, as well as Akila Riley Richardson, who is our clinical caseworker. There is myself. I am the research and program associate with the program at CAISO Sex and Gender Justice. And then there is Daniel Jones, who is our community lawyer who oversees all the legal support and legal services that we provide to clients. As Angelique would have shared with you, the services that we offer are legal services, clinical support, and wholeness development. And when we think about, because the ambit of the program is to service LGBTQI+ persons who have experienced some sort of violation, it's important that we clarify what a violation is. And the way we see it, as well as this is using both the international framework of violations, as well as some more experiential aspects of a violation. We've seen violation as an action or inaction that infringes on a person's human rights. And this can occur either intentionally from violence from a person in authority or authority or body, and also through omission by failure to protect, which, so we recognize some of these states' inability or failure to protect LGBTQI+ persons as an omission, which constitutes a violation. So some examples of the violations are abuse from authorities, infringements on safety and security of the person, safe failure to protect from exploitation and or discrimination, and infringement on equality before the law and due process. So persons who have had some experiences like this, or violations that aren't even in this list, these are the people that we provide services to. What happens when I contact Wholeness and Justice? So a little bit of our process. One can reach out to Wholeness and Justice either via email or through telephone, which we will share with you in a bit. And once they do that, chances are they would either speak to me or our community caseworker, Ray. And we sort of have a preliminary conversation with them, just to get a sense of, what they're experiencing and also what their needs are. From there, we have an assessment, an internal assessment within the team after doing an intake. And from there, we develop an intervention plan that is best suited for that person and their needs. And if it's a situation that doesn't fall within the ambit of the program, we try as best as possible to refer those persons to another organization or service provider that is able to adequately and appropriately respond to their needs. So we take the view that, you know, everybody needs to get service, and we try as much as possible to ensure that those people that need to get service, be it from us or from another competent service provider. And just to add as well, we also encourage persons to reach out to us regardless, because we understand that there are times where persons might not be sure whether what they are experiencing or what they experience was a violation. So we encourage them to reach out, and from that and from our intake and our assessment process, that's when we'll be able to, you know, determine what has occurred and what the person's needs, and if we'll be able to assist them. So just a quick snapshot of the activities that we have, the general activities that we have done within the past year. We have done several capacity building workshops, legal information sessions, living room series, which is officially relaunching at the end of this month. We have a Wholeness and Justice blog. We have had a migrant support group program for Spanish speaking LGBTQI plus migrants. We have deaf LGBTQI support, 30 Signed Together project, as Angelique will have mentioned, and we have put together a report with all the work that we have done within the past 13 months. Right, and this is how you could contact us. I'm sure one of my colleagues will put the information in the chat for you to have access to that. Right. And now we get to the insights from the work that Wholeness and Justice has done between December 2020 and December 2021. For one, we have done 42 intake assessments. Like I would have said earlier, we ensure that everyone that contacts us, an intake process is completed, but not everyone can be serviced by us because of our very specific mandates, as well as resources. So what we do is, again, if persons can't be assisted by us, we try as best as possible to, with their consent, we try as best as possible to refer them to another competent service provider. But out of the 42 intakes that we had done, we were able to enlist 33 clients. This is just an idea of the gender identity of these clients. We've had a very diverse clientele. We've had non-binary, genderqueer people, cisgender people, and trans people. Likewise, we had a relatively diverse sexual orientation within our clientele, with majority of them identifying as queer, next gay, and then we've had lesbian, bisexual, and heterosexual clients. Just to note that the heterosexual clients, I would have had trans people whose sexual orientation would be heterosexual, depending on, you know, who they're attracted to. Right, and this is generally the distribution of services that we would have given to our clients. So most people who would have accessed the program would have received clinical service. Then we'd have those who have received wholeness services. Then we'd have those who would have received a combination of services. And then you see 9.1% of our clients would have received legal services solely. And just want to share some of our key findings from last year. So we've recognized that there is a lot of housing instability and a growing need for safe housing, particularly for young LGBTQI plus persons. It's important to note as well that just the COVID-19 pandemic and the associated restrictions would have impacted this as well, because many people would have been confined to spaces, be it in their family or whatever spaces that they inhabit, where they aren't necessarily welcome, or where they aren't accepted, and where they feel unsafe. And because of that, they would need housing support, or they would need housing. Just to note as well that at this point in the program, we don't have any housing resources, as in we aren't able to provide safe housing for persons. So that's one of the things that we're also appealing to the government. We're calling on the government to assist with, because, you know, persons have the right to safe housing, and that is a right that they should be able to enjoy regardless of their sexual orientation or any other distinction that we have attached to people. And likewise, there is a growing need for financial and food assistance. So again, people, especially with the COVID-19 pandemic, the lockdown restrictions, and people not being able to work, and people also not having homes where they are safe. People need financial assistance and food assistance, and we have tried as best as we could to provide as many persons as we can with food and financial support through our emergency support and community support of the program. Likewise, there is a general ambiguity about whether or not a violation has occurred, which is why we think it's very important to clarify what a violation is. Because for many people, especially many LGBTQI plus people in Trinidad and Tobago, some of the things that they experience, it's easy for them to palm it off as a normal experience of an LGBTQI plus persons, sorry, where in reality, some of these things that they are facing and they are that's been done to them, violations. And that's another thing that the program is also trying to do. We're trying to sort of create an awareness within the community, the LGBTQI community, about rights. So we're trying to make ensure that people become more rights oriented and are able to advocate for themselves in instances where they have been met with a violation. Of course, granted that it's safe for them to do so, regardless, we encourage persons to contact emergency services where they are in a particularly dangerous or precarious situation. And of course, we would provide legal assistance, clinical support, and wholeness support where this is necessary. We've also noticed that there are many economic difficulties among the clients, which is reflected in the growing demand for housing, food, and financial support. And just to give you some of the ideas of some of the legal issues that we have been met with in terms of what clients or persons would have faced that we would have needed to assist them with. One of them being documentation. One of the things that we particularly assist people with is VPOL applications, which allow clients, particularly gender non-conforming trans clients, would have benefited from this application a lot, which allows them to sort of change their names, because we recognize that they aren't able to change their sex or their gender identity, or have their gender identity reflected in their identification documents, which is potentially dangerous for them, especially those of them who express themselves as they identify themselves. So we try to provide them with at least some sort of gender euphoria by facilitating that process of name change, where they are able to adopt the name that they would like for themselves. We've also been met with intimate partner violence, family violence, which is reflected again in the demand for housing, food, and financial support. We assist persons with the freedom of information applications, which particularly persons who are trying to document the violations that they would have experienced. It allows them to have access to those through medical or police records that exist. We have been faced with forced eviction as well, harassment, physical assault, police abuse of power, and unfair dismissal. So this is just to give you an idea of the range of experiences and range of violations that LGBTQI plus persons who have accessed the program have experienced. And I'm sure there are a lot more other types of violations that people experience on a day-to-day. And so we encourage persons to continue reaching out to the program and trying to access services for the program, so that we will continue to be able to support them, but also we would have an idea of the sort of experiences, we would have evidence of the sort of experiences that persons are having, which would allow us which would assist us in any advocacy work that we continue to do to push the government to provide support to, people living in Trinidad and Tobago. Just to give you an idea of the legal findings that we would have had. So we realized through the work that we have done in the past 13 months between December 2020 to December 2021, that there's a prevalence of different types of domestic violence faced by LGBTQI plus people. Now, this includes intimate partner violence, it includes family violence, and a range of other violence that persons face. Some examples that we have here is harassment, threats to life, property, and reputation, withholding of property, and the dissemination of intimate photographs, and videos. We've also realized that there's a hesitation to pursue legal action or engage legal services. Now, this, as we have in our engagement with clients, we've realized that it's for a host of different reasons. And this includes persons just being afraid of being outed, persons being afraid of retaliation from whoever would have been the perpetrator of that violation. We have just persons being generally anxious as well, and also there's concerns about the quality of services that LGBTQI plus persons would receive from service providers, because there have been instances where people will be discriminated against because of their sexual orientation, gender identity, or gender expression, and that sort of creates a harmful experience that does not aid in their seeking for redress and healing, which is why, again, we have the clinical arm of the program that really seeks to sort of engage the psychosocial aspect of persons' lives and to assist them with all of these different experiences that they would have. But regardless, we've noticed that there's also a general need for legal assistance, which is why we continue to do the work that we do to ensure that LGBTQI plus persons are able to access legal services where they have experienced the wrong. And now, this is just a quick overview of the social and personal issues that we would have noticed that some clients would have been having through the work that the clinical arm of the program does. We've noticed that there's family instability, there's a range of conditions related to person's emotional, psychological, and social well-being, which is reflected in their mental health state. We've noticed relationship conflicts, we've noticed the need for social assistance and social instability. So some of the things, just a quick snapshot of some of the clinical issues that were documented in the last year of the program. So we have depression, anxiety, relationship challenges, dissociation, trauma, bipolar disorder, relationship challenges, familial relationship challenges rather, gender dysphoria, borderline personality disorder, schizophrenia, clinically diagnosed schizophrenic traits, and traits of borderline personality disorder. But the clinical team will definitely speak to some of these things in their presentation. And some of the key findings we've noticed from the clinical work that we have done is that there's a lack of safety and privacy in clients' environments to receive counseling. And this is particularly concerning, especially during the lockdown period where persons would have been confined to a specific space. This would prevent them from being able to access the sort of specific clinical interventions that they need, or as frequently as they need them, because they feel unsafe in their spaces in their private spaces, well, what's supposed to be private spaces, to speak about some of the things that they're experiencing. And then we've had people unable to attend sessions just because of different anxieties and stuff that they have surrounding their experiences. And we've also had noticed a lack of employment, which complicates mental health and sense of agency. Yeah, this is also just to give you a quick overview. And Angelique had provided some of these details in the snapshot that she presented earlier, but this is some of the community interventions that we've done. We've provided emergency food support to persons. We've also developed a program, or curated a space rather, called Living Room, which sort of provides a sense of community, which aims to provide a sense of community to LGBTQI plus persons, especially during the lockdown period, and allows them to participate in different activities that seek to assist them with coping, particularly with the pandemic and the lockdown, and just seek to engage themselves and their competencies. We've had some shared spaces, particularly surrounding some of the losses that we would have had within the past year. And we've also had a number of awareness and capacity building trainings and workshops for mental health practitioners and among the team as well. Yeah, so again, these are some of the things we've done: the food support, shared space, awareness, and capacity building. Just want to remind you all that the insights, the full insights report will be available and made available to those of you in the Zoom through the chat, but will be published after the end of this conference. Now, I want to hand you over to our clinical team with Ray Alabi and Akila Richardson, who would speak to some of the clinical findings and clinical work that they have done rather within the past year. Akila,
thank you so much, Kellogg. Sorry, I just want to give a shout out first before if Ray and Akila can join us so we can spotlight them. But first of all, I just want to say huge thanks to Kellogg for sharing those insights and doing so in a way that brings to life the work, and acknowledging Kellogg's work as our research and program associate with CAISO and Wholeness and Justice. And please, for the media who are here, of course, you've received the full report, but just to say for the video acknowledgement that this report was produced and completed by the Wholeness and Justice team. That includes Kellogg, Ray, Danielle, Akila, everyone's full names are here, and on the report, as well as acknowledging Elron, our program coordinator and CAISO board member. And I am going to bring on huge thanks to the entire team. And I just want to acknowledge the work that went into analyzing and offering these key findings for our first full year of the provision of services. And I'm really pleased to welcome our clinical team, and we are adding them spotlighting. I am doing that now. Where is Ray? I'm finding Ray. Okay, wonderful. Handing over to Ray and Akila. Thank you so much. And Kellogg, can you advance the slides, please? Thank you.
Hi, good day, everyone. I'm so excited to be here to share with you the work that we have done over the last year. In the interest of time and respecting your time, I will just briefly go through some of the findings we have had dealing with clients on the groundwork and looking at a theoretical framework that we call minority stress. Could you please, I'm going to allow you to present us up. Akila, would you be so kind as to present yourself as well?
Hi, my name is Akila Riley Richardson. I am the clinical administrator for the program.
Right. So the two of us together, we work together to bring social support and clinical support, psychosocial support and clinical support to members of the community. Minority stress is a very, according to Myers 2003, it's a unique stress that is specific to minority communities, particularly the LGBTQI plus community. And it simply says that because of this additional stress of being marginalized, being discriminated, or having incidences of stigma, that the stress levels experienced by LGBTQ plus people is higher than that of the average person, and that their health outcomes tend to be significantly depressed, both physically as well as mentally. Could you, thank you very much. Yes, yeah, so essentially, yes, when compared to other places, that I said before, the queer community, that let me use that umbrella term, please, would experience higher rates of NCDs, mental illness, like depression, anxiety, or just a general sense of malaise or isolation that allows the community to survive but not thrive. Next slide, please.
And so,
and
so some of the things that stress out our community, we can think about it in two categories: distal stressors and proximal stressors. And what we've noticed with our people is that they experience various forms of victimization, discrimination, and also in our work with them, because we also provide therapy for our people, we would hear them describe things called microaggressions, which are these subtle ways in which they are told or hurtful things or treated in hurtful ways, yeah, by members of the community. Please advance the slide. In addition, we've also taken note of the fact that a lot of our people battle proximal stressors. And the proximal stressors really refer to their own cognitive processes, their own thoughts and their own emotional processes that are impaired, that are challenged, as a result of discrimination. So as we would have mentioned in the report, we have a lot of persons who battle depression, anxiety, BPD, borderline personality disorder, etc. And I don't even like the word disorder because, truth be told, these are natural and adaptive responses to stress. So one of the things at Wholeness and Justice, we shy away from using words such as bipolar disorder or borderline personality disorder because we understand that some of these things our people face are as a result of self-stigma, are as a result of rejection, unnatural adaptations to an abnormal and hostile environment. And we just want to read this particular quote. I think LGBT plus persons are more at risk from mental illness than anyone else. It's easy to become depressed when, in addition to everyday pressures, there's so much opposition to who you are. It's easy to have anxiety. It's easy to use drugs and alcohol. And so I'll let Ray kind of talk a little bit about the minority stress model and how we've been seeing it featuring for our people.
So let us take an individual who is a member of the queer community. In addition to the regular stresses that people have, let us say a young teenager, right? Dealing with the pimples and the idea that people are looking at them and thinking that they don't look good and they're very, very self-conscious. And the parents are just not understanding and they're having difficult times with school, regular things. In addition to that, you start the individual will feel like a burden because inside now they are repressing this what would be a natural inclination for them to same-sex attraction that becomes burdensome because perhaps they live in an environment that is very religious or they have received gender socialization norms that insist on heteronormativity. So they carry with them this internalized homophobia and shame and dealing with concealment stress of trying to present as heteronormative. In addition to which some persons just can't hide or they, for whatever reason, other persons in the school or even as a young adult, for some reason they would assume that the person is not heteronormative, but heterosexual. And just the perception alone creates additional stress. That kind of stress allows, then, could I get back the slide? Thank you. That kind of stress will lead to feelings of depression, suicide ideation, and in most cases, major depression. I want to make a point here about major depression as opposed to regular depression. Many members of the community, of my community, we live with depression, but it is on a threshold that is so low that is just like a constant hum. So it hardly gets flagged. And there are instances where whatever extra stressors or financial burdens or whatever internalized feelings that someone may have, or even their own genetic makeup, it would raise a threshold so the person starts to present with major depression, suicidal ideation, or bipolarism. But what is of real concern to us is that there are lots of persons within our community that are just living every day with depression, just surviving with depression right through as if it's a normal part of life. Next slide, please. So these are the challenges faced by the community. We know all too well about the violence. We have so many deaths. There's a Sasha Fierce, there was a young man, Richard was his name, the Guyanese guy, I think it was early last year. Just something, and sometimes violence could be just as simple as walking down the road and having somebody say something ugly to you. You don't feel safe. Then there's the structural and systemic abuse in the ways that government services are shaped to be heteronormative. So you don't even get protection under the Equal Opportunity Act. The very act that is supposed to protect you from discrimination is in itself discriminatory. Homelessness is one of the most pervasive challenges faced by the community. We are so stressed for facing the people that they're often couch surfing. Yes, they're often couch surfing or on the streets. And so many of the members of the community do live in the parks in Port of Spain. until they could find somewhere else to put them up for a while. Sometimes, oddly enough, jail is actually a good opportunity for them to get a place to get shelter. Some persons sleep in the cemetery, they feel safer there anyways than just being on the streets. So yeah, these are very deep abuses that occur within the individual's experience. Of course, there's sexual and physical, emotional trauma, financial abuse. We talk about the workplace policy. If you don't have an inclusive workplace policy and someone is transgender looking for work, you're going to want to force them to dress in a way that they feel uncomfortable. Most of the times they don't feel themselves applying for jobs. They feel this stress of the concealment of the perception of being judged. They prefer to do informal work. And this in itself becomes a form of financial abuse. Just having to live every day being queer in a place that is non-affirming, that is judgmental, that has structures in place to make things difficult for you, becomes a form of endurance trauma. Every day you have to deal with this. You have to always be resistant. Loss of family of origin is very painful for many members of the community, which leads to substance abuse and dependency, ways of coping, because there's so much pain and hurt brought out of these stressors. Next slide, please.
So now we hand over to Angelique now to just speak more about these services. And the last thing I'll say, I really want to give a huge shout out to Ray Alabi. Ray Alabi is, I mean, I'm just the administrator. Ray Alabi is really the one on the ground doing the work. Ray has been in this work for a very, very long time. And there's absolutely no way that this work could have the impact that it has on the community without the work that Ray does as a queer person, as a person who has the grounded knowledge. You know, she's certainly been a beacon, not only in Trinidad, but I think by extension the Caribbean, as an example of this work. So I just want to celebrate Ray.
Thank you so much, Sakila.
Thank you so much. And I want to say a huge thanks to both Akila and Ray for leading our clinical efforts. Ray, if you want to stay on with me, as we talk about the snapshot of services this year and acknowledging the work that we've done since last year and what has grown. And I also want to give a shout out to our community engagement officer, project coordinator, Joanna, who has joined us in this capacity since January. And so we've been able to expand some of our community development. And I want to just give that snapshot. So Kellogg, if you want to come back on too, that would be great. This work is, and I want to acknowledge the teamwork. CAISO's work happens because we have been able to expand and grow and bring on team members to do this work. And it certainly takes all of us together, bringing our skills. And so I just want to share a little bit as we close, before we open up for any questions you might have, just to share what we've done since January, since we just gave you the insights report of our first full year up to the end of 2021, and now what's happening for 2022 in these first 5 months of the year. We've enlisted 13 new clients, so total to date are 46. Now, of course, all of our client information is private and confidential. Some people remain in the program. We consistently do intakes. We are available Monday through Saturday for inquiries, and we engage in a process, as Kellogg already shared. We've been able to increase our community emergency support. We've increased the amount of food vouchers we've been able to provide to community members. 10 to 15 people we've been able to support each month. Our roster is based on the work that Ray has long been doing, but also particularly since the COVID pandemic and the work we did during the lockdowns around food support. We've increased that and provided support specifically for trans people and people involved in sex work because of the particular levels of vulnerability and the informal work environments and the great need that exists within these communities in particular. We have given over $30,000 just this year so far in food vouchers. We also support clients, 5 in particular so far this year, who've needed further support, for example, medical, rental, travel, and so on. And so these things make up a really important part of our community development and our wholeness development part of the program. And now I want to share a little bit about our legal awareness and self-advocacy. We have 2 really important video series, one that has been launched already as a part of our migrant LGBTQI migrant support work. We have a series of videos titled Being LGBTQI in Trinidad and Tobago, and it's in Spanish and English. And it offers ways to how do you report something to the police? What are your what are the avenues for you to seek help, and how you can find out more information about wholeness and justice. We also have a new series that will be launched very soon called Wills and Grace, Estate Planning for the LGBTQI+ community. So we look forward to sharing that. That's really about how we plan for our families and for our chosen families and for relationships that are not recognized by the state, and how important it is to put your papers in place, as it were. We also continue our support for Sign Together project, which is a CAISO project. And we are creating spaces for deaf LGBTQI+ leaders to engage. We also are training members of the community and service providers in sign language, because we recognize that the ways that those vulnerabilities can exacerbate experiences of discrimination. And we ourselves at CAISO are working on is making sure as much of our work is accessible. You will soon see Sign Sundays on CAISO social media. We invite you to follow along on our social media so you can see the work that we're doing. And then finally, highlighting 2 really important things. We have some community development activities coming up, ones that we've hosted already, as well as some upcoming work. And so if we can go to the next slide, please. I want to highlight 2 really important, 2 important things we've completed this year. We did our 2nd webinar on capacity building for mental health practitioners with Akila and Ray, who led that effort. It was really well oversubscribed with so many engaging mental health practitioners and folks who are really interested in these issues. We also had a private community meetup on Trans Day of Visibility with our community lawyer, Danielle, which was also a really excellent initiative. And we will continue these kinds of activities. If we move to the next slide, as we close, just tell you about 2 important things coming up. We are launching a Wholeness and Justice Clinic, and this will be on, our first one will be on the 28th of May. The registration link will be in the Zoom, and this is all across our social media, so please do sign up. This is a space for people who want to explore, maybe you think you've experienced a violation and you want to just talk with our team. And we have a number of spaces still available for that, and we will be hosting that monthly. We also have launched our community meetup and living room series, skill sharing workshops, where we want to increase, again, you heard the message of empowerment and self-advocacy from Ray and from Kellogg. We are doing that through different kinds of workshops, 2 upcoming ones on CV writing and interview prep. Moving into our next slide. So now on this IDAHOBIT Day, of course, please, Ray and Kellogg, if you have anything to add, you want to highlight, I think this is a good moment, and we are still in time in our wrap-up period. So if we have any further comments, Akila, of course, come back on and share anything that you want to share. And we would love to hear from members of the media, stakeholders, anyone who's joined us, if you have questions about anything we've presented today. I'm checking the chat, and Joanna has put in a number of links, so we encourage you please to check that out, and please share the Wholeness and Justice Clinic link with anyone you know who might need it, and share it please in your reporting of this media conference and the launch of the Wholeness and Justice Insights report, which we have made available here for you. Maybe we should put that link up again, Joanna, if you can, please. And it will also be launched on the website and available across our socials. If you need it by email, we are happy to email it to you as well, so you can let us know. And So I think this is the time to just do a vote of thanks so we can wrap up mostly on time. We're a few minutes delayed, even with our technical difficulties. Joanna has shared the file. Thank you so much. I want to invite all of you, members of the media, thank you so much for taking the time and being here with us. We encourage you to review the report. Contact us if you have any questions. When we move to the next slide, you'll find all of our contact info, but you've heard from us. You can always email us at info@caisott.org. You could also email anyone on our team. You can see and find all of our email addresses and contact info on the CAISO website, or ask us here. And we want to reiterate as we close that Wholeness and Justice can be reached by phone, WhatsApp, and email, 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. Monday through Saturday. Of course, our email address is there, and our phone number 868-28-CAISO or 282-2476. And I want to just say thank you to the entire CAISO team. Huge thanks to Joanna for managing all of our tech support. And thanks to Psyche for also being here and supporting, Chandel. Huge thanks to Akila and Ray for presenting, and huge thanks to Kellogg and all of our work in preparing for today. And for our CAISO team folks who are not here, I want to give a huge shout out to Elron, who does the enormous job of coordinating our program for CAISO. And huge thanks to Omar, our other board member, and Kathy, who couldn't be here today. And to everyone involved in the work of CAISO, we appreciate you. And to all of the people that we are just blessed and privileged really to do work with, our communities. You matter the most. And so, in closing, I just want to say that we are here for you. None of this is easy. Living every day as a queer person, we understand. Many of us also experience different challenges, but we also understand the different ways that we experience the world as queer, trans, gay, lesbian, intersex. And we want for CAISO to continue offering and building with you. So please come to us anytime with your ideas, things that you are in need of. And for media and allies and folks who want to cover these issues, we also encourage you, please, to contact us. We remain a resource for you, and we're really thrilled to work with you. And we are happy to get this report out so that we have clear information as we continue to call on decision makers, our leaders, and our government to meet human rights obligations and to make sure that we have enabling environments for all rights and freedoms, especially for LGBTQI plus people living in Trinidad and Tobago. And so we're really, really thankful of this opportunity. And I want to say it is 11:06. I think we did pretty good with time. I'm checking the chat to see if there are any other messages or questions. Akila, Ray, Kellogg, anything that you want to add, please jump in.
I don't have anything new to add, but I also want to reiterate for community members that to contact emergency services when they're in emergency situations, because we aren't able to provide emergency services to persons so regardless of whether or not the timing that it has happened, it doesn't have to be immediately after or whenever, but just always encourage persons to contact emergency services. And we are a secondary resource. So when they do need legal services and clinical services, we're always available to assist. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kellogg.
Well, let me just simply add that we, as members of the queer community, we could do a whole lot more than just survive. We can thrive. A lot of persons, when we talk about the violations it has been so normalized within the community. But I would challenge you to say that you knew when you have experienced a violation, you feel angry, you feel hurt, you feel discomfort within yourself. Coming to CAISO's Wholeness and Justice program gives you an opportunity to sort out those feelings, and most importantly, to externalize them rather than internalize them, rather than think that you got fired today because you are gay. No, you didn't get fired today because you are gay. You got fired today because your boss is very limited in his understanding of the world and human diversity. And just having that in your head really changes the way in which you can begin to navigate our country. It's enough space for everybody. And I really do believe that. And we as queer persons grew up thinking that the issue was us. It's time to rewrite that narrative and start externalizing, understanding that we are quite normal, we belong, we are citizens of Trinidad and Tobago, and we deserve all the rights and privileges that any citizen of Trinidad and Tobago deserves. So don't be afraid to come forward with those violations. You knew them, you know it when you feel the anger, when you feel the shame, when you feel the rejection. It is not something to normalize anymore.
And with that, Ray, I think you have given us the most powerful closing remarks. Our bodies, our lives, our rights, and on this IDAHOBIT 2022, we leave you with these really powerful remarks and these presentations of the work that we have done with Wholeness and Justice. And for members of the media, we thank you again for joining us, and stakeholders, and we invite our continued efforts that we can work together and create an inclusive and enabling, living, day-to-day environments for all of us. There's enough room for everybody. Thank you so much, Ray. We don't want more rights than anyone else. We just want the same rights. And with that, we thank you so much, and we invite you to join us again for future conversations. We thank you. And we encourage you, please, to review our materials and be in touch with us. Thank you.